Hello, welcome to Self-Healing Saturday is what I've dubbed this, because we are doing our live videos for the German New Medicine Self-Healing Support Group on Saturdays in this group here. So some of you may be watching this on one of my public pages, my Dr. Melissa Sell page, because I want to give you a sneak peek of what happens inside the GNM Self-Healing Support Group, because we're just getting this going and I'm super excited about it because this group has so much potential to help a lot of people, because we do personal coaching, but you can only help so many people with personal coaching, and the issues that people face and the struggles and the conflicts that people face, we all experience them in very individual ways, but there are general rules of thumb, things that apply to lots of people. And so we wanted to build a platform where we can help a lot of people with these very common issues and figure out how are you experiencing this and what can you do to change that experience. You know, we are both, I'm Dr. Melissa Sell, by the way, and this is my partner, Dr. Stephen Robinstock, and we are both chiropractors by training, but over the last several years we have been teaching mindset strategies and how to get to the core, the essence of what it is like to be you. How do you build your perception of yourself, the world, and other people? And this journey has taken us to such amazing places in our own personal lives with how we deal with, you know, personal trauma, past trauma, conflicts, and how we create an awesome version of our life every single day. And the things that we've discovered are so helpful for pretty much every single person that's having an experience. So when it comes to this self-healing support group and the German New Medicine component, is that all healing is self-healing. Everything comes down to your relationship with you, what is going on mentally, emotionally, internally for you as an individual. And the work of Dr. Dirk Hamer, who discovered German New Medicine, he found that everything that we think of as disease, whether it's a head cold, whether it's cancer, whether it's, you know, digestive problems, every single symptom of our physical body is a manifestation. It is a response to something going on psychologically and emotionally. So Dr. Hamer discovered that we don't even call them diseases anymore. It's a significant biological special program. It's something that has developed many years ago for the survival of your physical body. When you have something that catches you off guard, which is in German New Medicine, it's called a conflict shock, or a DHS, which stands for Dirk Hamer Syndrome. And it's called that because Dr. Hamer, the way he discovered this, you know, what has turned into this amazing natural science of German New Medicine, was that he unexpectedly, when his son was 17 years old, his son was shot and killed, and it was just an absolute trauma for him and his family, and he developed testicular cancer a few months later. And so he was so enthralled with the idea that, you know, he had been completely healthy. Why did he develop cancer? What was the reason? And he discovered, and he studied thousands and thousands of patients and has developed a complete natural science of understanding what is going on with the body when we have a conflict. And what's happening is at the cellular level, your psyche, your mind perceived something in your external environment, some kind of shock, some kind of trauma, something that caught you off guard. And in a moment, you were frustrated, you were helpless, you were scared, you were kind of surprised. And before you were even aware that you had a conflict, your body makes a subconscious assessment of what is going on in your external world. And because your body, your nervous system, the reason it is the way that it is, it's for survival. It's so that you stay alive. And so based on the content, so what exactly the circumstance is in your external environment, your subconscious mind, your brain, makes a split-second decision of what tissues can be adapted, can be modified for your maximum survival capability. You know, so in the case of a death fright conflict, if you have a death fright, so something like a car accident, maybe a shocking diagnosis, something that happens that you are scared for your life in that moment, the biological program is for your lung tissue to proliferate, to build additional cells. And the biological purpose of that is so that you have more oxygen in your bloodstream, so that you can get out of this scary, you know, death fright situation and get to safety. And so there's a whole science, the 5 biological laws that Dr. Hamer discovered, and it's absolutely the most amazing. I mean, Dr. Hamer truly deserves all of the awards for all doctors ever because of what he discovered, but so few people even know about it. And so I have a GNM 101 video on YouTube that I highly recommend you watch, because this group isn't necessarily about teaching all of the mechanics. This is more practical application. So how, knowing this, now that we know that all diseases, all symptoms of the body stem from some type of biological, psychobiological conflict, something that happened in our lives, how do we apply that? How do we prevent disease if it's not from a germ or a bug? It's truly from our perception, something that caused us to go into a fight or flight mode, something that caught us off guard, scared us to the point that now our body is adapting to a situation. How do you apply that in daily life? And that is where the work that Dr. Stephen is absolutely amazing at, which is your perception. How do you alter your perception to see more of what you want to see in the world, to be less scared, to be less irritatable, to be less nervous in situations? How do you change your perception of what it's like to be you? How can you become more resilient so that, because there are people that they're resilient people, and their makeup, it seems like things happen to them in their lives, but they handle it beautifully and they don't get freaked out. They don't get upset. But then there are other people who are very fragile, and every little thing upsets them and can set them off into, and they have these kind of chronic lifestyles of being really stressed and worried and overwhelmed and scared and anxious. And I myself have struggled with that. I haven't always been a resilient person who can handle all sorts of different things happening. And there have been very specific ways that I've built that resilience within myself, but then also realizing that we're not all impervious to little things happening that catch you off guard. And so that's some of what we want to get into today, is the nature of conflict. How do we relate to these conflicts in our lives, these things that happen, because by nature they're unexpected. And there's a difference between like just regular stress, things that you can anticipate, things that you can expect, things that you kind of knew were going to happen, versus things that just kind of catch you off guard. And for those things, there are ways for you to kind of guard yourself, to build up your threshold for what you can handle. So we're going to go through several points and talk about a few specific situations as well. So let's get into it. So let's first talk about the nature of conflict. So Dr. Hamer, what he discovered is that it's a moment in time. So everything that leads to any type of symptom, there was a moment in time that happened that caught you off guard. You were just not expecting. You're just kind of going along your daily life, and you get a phone call or something happens. You get a text message. You discover something. You accidentally do something, and you were caught off guard. In that moment, you felt helpless. You felt like this was a surprise, a shock to you, a frustration. And these could be very small things, very little things, very little comments from other people that you're just like, oh, whoa, I did not expect you to say that, or I was expecting you to say something different. Whatever it was, there was just a moment in time where your body perceived an unexpected something in your environment. And your nervous system, again, it is always responding to every little thing that is going on in your world, because that's what the nervous system is. It's a response mechanism. It sees what is needed by the physical body. If you're walking up a flight of stairs, if you're on a hike, what happens? Your blood pressure, goes up, and your heart beats faster, because it's responding to the requirements, to the need of your physical body in that moment. But when you start to realize that the evolution of our bodies, of every single one of our tissues, there are ways that our body helps us that we have not been aware that it's a helpful situation that's happening.
I would say, just real quick, in terms of, so the business of the organism is survival, right? It's the thing that the organism does. Because if survival weren't the organism's business, then the organism wouldn't survive, then we wouldn't be here talking about this. And so when you get that there's a huge percentage of we as organisms are geared towards not only surviving in the face of an immediate, definite, obvious threat, but also doing as much as we possibly can on the front end, preliminarily, right, in response to potential threats. And so this is where the nervous system comes online as a signal detection system, understanding that really what's happening here, what does it mean for an organism to be all about survival? It means it's all about receiving input, information, feedback from the external world, and assessing that information in terms of survival or in terms of threat. So if something comes in that is significant and adverse, potentially threatening, it makes sense that the organism would begin to respond in a kind of prophylactic way, in a kind of preventative way. Okay, we might have a problem here. And if we wait until it's certain that this is a problem, it may be too late. So as soon as we detect it, and this makes sense, right? Because if we had, let's say 10, 20, 30,000 years ago, or let's say 300,000 or 400,000 years ago, we had one organism who kind of said, they required absolute certainty that there was a threat before they began to respond and adapt or flee or get ready to fight or whatever. And there was another organism that required significantly less in order for them to say, let's just be on the safe side here, right? There's this reason that we tend to prefer false positives, which is to say that we would rather get ready for an adverse event and then have that adverse event in fact not occur than we would not get ready for an event and then be totally taken by surprise by it. So because it makes sense, you can survive thinking there's danger when there's not a lot better than you can survive not thinking there's danger when there is. And so we've developed this capacity to be very, very sensitive to slight indications of potential threat, potential danger, potential adversity in our environment. That's signal detection, and signal detection with a bias towards false positives. So I'm going to tend to, that's the reason that I can get anxious and nervous about something as simple as, say, public speaking, or that's the reason I can get really worked up about an innocuous comment from somebody that, well, given the fact that this happened, and given the fact that we've had this relationship, maybe they meant this thing. Isn't that interesting that we even have a tendency to wonder about how could this be a bad thing? And that for me is one of the major things, is beginning to realize that everything about what it is like to be you, the only reason that you've got the ability to have an emotion, to experience a feeling, to have some experience, is that experience, the capacity to have it, in some way or another confers some survival value to the whole of your organism, right? To the aspects of yourself that you don't typically think of as yourself. And that's a really strange thing to think about. Me, if I can feel motivated, if I can feel excitement, if I can feel anger, if I can feel frustration, if I can feel insecurity, if I can feel exhilaration, if I can feel hunger, if I can feel happiness, if I can feel contentment, if I can feel fear, if I can feel, it might be looping back around, but you get the idea. All of these things that we don't normally associate really with survival in our kind of modern, civilized, at least in theory, civilized world, we don't associate those things with survival. But if you think about it for a second, the organism's main purpose is survival, and it has this signal detection system, this nervous system, right, that is designed to receive information from the environment through the lens of how is this relevant to survival? How is this relevant to survival? How might this be relevant to survival if this were relevant to survival? In what direction would it be relevant? Which say, what is this telling me about the environment that I'm in right now and this environment's prospects to either benefit me or be a danger to me moving forward in the future? Now, when you think about your emotions, or when you think about the totality of what we call what it is like to be you in a given moment in time, if something is an element or an aspect or a component of what it's like to be you, it must have some relevance at some level, or must have had some relevance at some level in your ancestral history to survival. And that's a very interesting thing. If I'm anxious, if I'm jealous, if I'm worried, if I'm experiencing all those different things, I have to understand that conscious sensation that I tend to really experience in a very kind of humanistic way. I don't like to feel this way. It doesn't feel good. I want to get better, not so I can survive. I want to get better so I can feel better. In order to know how to get to feeling better, it really helps a lot to realize the reason I'm capable of having this feeling, this experience, this emotion, is that it in some way or another is relevant to survival, or was relevant to survival. Now, given the fact that I'm aware of that, how can I kind of experience this, conceptualize it, relate to it, think about it, work on changing it, if I recognize that this is a component of this signal detection system, this nervous systems, right? operation, which is designed to ensure my survival. And I think when you understand it in that way, you start to realize that, it may seem ridiculous that a person would develop some kind of what we think of as a disease because of something minor that happens to them in their daily life experience. Or it might even seem ridiculous that, say the loss of a child, how could that possibly trigger within somebody something that modern medicine regards as a life-threatening disease? Well, if you understand the fact that if I feel extreme loss, the loss of a child, or extreme worry because my child is not doing well right now, that there is a level of communication that's going on. My nervous system is interpreting what I am interpreting at kind of a psychological level, love of parent for love of child in a kind of humanistic way. There are kind of neurological patterns of information processing that are going on beneath that. And when you understand that that's going on, that the totality of who you are as an organism is so much greater than the you that you experience yourself to be in everyday waking consciousness. Now, when you realize that, it starts to become a lot easier to think about the you that you experience yourself to be. Think about what it's like to be you in terms of what does this imply about what's going on in the larger ecology of my organism, right? So if I, as just me, as Steve, not as this organism, but as like Steve that I experience, the person that I introduce myself to other people as, if I'm feeling this way, what does that say about what the rest of me is likely to be doing, right? What is the what's the tissue level? What's the organismic kind of like corollary to this experience of what it's like to be me that I'm having right now? Because there's always a relationship. You never feel some way for no reason. You never have some experience for no reason. There's never, like, this distinction between psychological and biological is not a real distinction, right? We are talking about the same things at different levels. We're talking about different aspects of the same process, different aspects of the same experience, different elements of the same ecology. And when you recognize that, it's interesting, to me, it's just so interesting because the capacity to have a psychological experience, the capacity to feel some way, means that the ability to feel that way has implications at the tissue level, at the survival level, at the organismic level. And on the other hand, every way that I'm feeling is a reflection of, or it has a correlate within what we would think of as the biological health, well-being, tissue, behavior, cellular level of the body and what it's up to. And it's such a common sense thing, but it's something that we're kind of estranged from. It's the whole Descartes and this whole separation between mind and body, as if these things don't have any relationship to each other. And now if you're a really progressive medical practitioner, you say, well, there's actually a mind-body connection. It's not a mind-body connection. It's a mind-body unity. It's one thing. Mm-hmm. It's just that because the we that we experience ourselves to be is mind. We experience ourselves as we are mind, we have a body. But the reality is, as much as that's true, we are a body, we have a mind. There is an interconnectedness to this thing. And when you start kind of recognizing that and you start kind of accounting for, correcting for, what I have started to call a perceptual chauvinism, that we tend to perceive ourselves as the mind. And we have this uncooperative body that breaks down and gets all these diseases, and it's kind of a pain in the ass in some respect. It doesn't cooperate with us, right? But when you recognize that there is communication that's occurring between those things, that you begin to build this rapport. You kind of end that estrangement, and you start asking yourself, what am I communicating to me based on how I'm feeling, how I'm perceiving, how I'm thinking, how I'm believing right now, and what am I seeing right now? And you get into the mechanics of that. You start to think with your body and mind, which is a very interesting thing to start doing, and you start to take care of your body kind of with your thoughts in mind. And yeah, it's a really interesting thing.
And we become such head in jars that it truly, some people, when they are presented with this model, they think it sounds silly, poetic almost, and simplistic. Oh, if I'm feeling, and here are just some examples of like what your body is doing. If your body has a way to help you out of a situation. So for example, if you are, I did a tutorial that's also on YouTube about the thyroid. And so if your thyroid is to speed you up, to speed up your metabolism, to help you hurry up and break down more food. If you are feeling behind, if you have some kind of like high pressure job and you've got to things have to be somewhere on a certain deadline, and if you're feeling behind, if you are feeling like I can't catch up, I really need to hurry up, if you're feeling, like this pressure, if your body has a way to help you, which it does, which is let's add additional thyroid cells so that we can produce more thyroxine, so that we can break down and process and use raw material a lot faster. We can speed them up to get out of this, what seems like a pretty dire situation if we don't hurry up. And again, this all really evolved and developed at times when it was like life or death. If you don't catch that prey, your children don't eat, you don't eat, everybody dies. You know, and so it truly does come down to like a life or death. This is a threat. The fact that but see, because we aren't, you know, animals in the wild anymore, you know, we're these domesticated creatures, we experience having to have a paper on a desk or an email sent to someone submitted at this certain time. We experience that as though, I mean, it represents so much to us. It represents our livelihood. It represents our reputation. It represents, you know, us holding down this job. And so that's how, you know, with these very symbolic minds that we have, this isn't just poetic. This isn't just, oh, well, that sounds nice, but, you know, this is actually a real scary problem within my body. It's like, well, that's what we've thought for a very long time. You know, if you have bitten off more than you can chew, if there is some kind of indigestible bit of experience that you just like, you cannot process, your body experiences that like a chunk of bone that you just like, you bit off, you swallowed it, and it's in there now, and your body with its normal amount of digestive juices can't break it down. So what does it do? Let's build what we call a tumor. We build these additional cells. The cells proliferate, so we've got more digestive juices. And the thing is, again, in the wild, this would just be a thing that happens all of the time. You know, situations happen, your body handles it, and you're over it, and your cat isn't worrying about, you know, a piece of bone that it ate that was too much from, you know, years ago. But we have this capacity. We've got this cerebral cortex that has all of this, you know, ability to, you know, dredge up situations from the past hurts, past wounds, and we become sensitized to certain types of conflict themes, and this tends to come up for us again and again and again. And because our nervous system is very sensitive to a certain theme, we are able to perceive things that aren't even the same as that situation. Because of our perceptual mechanism, we're kind of primed to see things in that certain way. So if you're primed to feel left out, you know, if you were a younger sibling and you had all of these older siblings and you never got to participate in what they did, you can set up a conflict theme. And again, all of this happens for the most part outside of your consciousness. For the most part, you're not aware of it. It's just the way you see the world. But these lenses through which you see the world, they color, they shape, they determine what you see and how you experience it. And so and this is like the amazing thing about GNM and about why everything is so unique to the individual, because every individual is so different in the way that they see the world. Like no two people see the world in the same way. Even siblings born from the same parents, ate the same food, grew up in the same house, went to the same school, but they had completely different experiences because they're unique individuals. And that's why anything that's one size fits all, anything that's, oh, just cut out this food, cut out that food, do this detox, do this cleanse, or, you know, do this chemo, do this radiation, do this, whichever, it's not taking into account. It's all behavior. It's all do this, not that. What we're doing is think this, try thinking about what you're thinking about. And because this, again, it tends to be such a nebulous thing because what we're always thinking, we're thinking 70,000 thoughts a day, but getting those thoughts under your conscious control, becoming aware of, whoa, I think I just had a conflict shock. And then a lot of times you won't even find out until after the fact. You know, like Just
real quick, because there's one thing about that when you're talking about the feeling left behind. Now, see, an interesting example about this is, so for me, because I'm coming from like the mind perspective here, but I'm also interested in sort of evolution and biology and just like the why is it that there is something that it's like to be us? That's a strange thing. Now, if you stop to think about that for a second, you can really begin to appreciate the deep layers of these things that most people never even think about. Why would an individual, have you ever felt left behind? Have you ever felt left out? Isn't it a strange thing that you have the capacity to have that feeling, to have that experience? Isn't it odd that you've got the ability and the inclination and the proclivity to worry about being left behind? Why is that? That's not why are you worrying about being left behind? Well, because when I was little this and then, but isn't it weird that we even got the ability to do that? Like I got really mad about moving some furniture around yesterday. It wasn't going the way I wanted it to. I got so angry about that in this moment. In that moment, it's funny now. It wasn't funny then to me, right?
It was funny.
It was funny to you. But in that moment in time, I got so angry about that. And later on, I was thinking, God, isn't it funny? Not only that I would get angry about something so silly, but isn't it funny that I got the ability to get that angry at all? That's strange. Don't take that for granted, because there's a lot of organisms in this world who don't seem to have the ability to experience that range of emotion, certainly not to express it. And so if you've got the ability to feel left behind, get curious about that. That's really interesting. And the thing that came to mind for me was, let's say 80,000, 70,000 years ago, hunter-gatherer society, everyone's moving around, from place to place. And if you're straggling there at the back of the line and that doesn't bother you, you see that the closest person in your train is up, let's say 300 or 400 yards ahead of you, and you look there and you're like, yeah, they're doing their thing, we're doing our thing, we're pretty much together, everything's fine. Compare that to a person who's straggling back behind and they look up there and they say, oh shit, our group is far away, we've got to catch up to them. The experience or the ability to have a feeling of being left behind, you can see plausibly that would perhaps manifest in behavioral changes, picking up the pace, making an effort to catch up with the people that might confer some survival value. And so you can understand that's one plausible, it's not the explanation, but it makes sense that an individual would have the capacity to feel left behind because it would confer some kind of survival value to them. And you can understand how, if that was true for a lot of people, well, then over time we would probably develop a population, a human population that was, very adept at feeling left out, very adept, being sensitive to evidence of being behind in some way, being sensitive to evidence of being left out in some way, because we're kind of socially oriented animals. We're very kind of social creatures. Now, the interesting thing about this then is, and this is something too that you were talking about when you start applying it to other life events based on something that happened earlier, and you can witness the interesting thing. I love macro and micro scales. I love going from one like small picture details to big picture principle, and then I like going from a big picture principle to another set of small picture details. You can witness this whole thing happen over the course of human development. There's this interesting thing that happens, I think it's around kids like 3 to 4. They start learning cool stuff about communication. They start learning cool stuff about the way the world works. They start kind of problem solving around that age, and there's a tendency for them to do something called overgeneralize. They'll learn something about language in particular, about how certain word sequences go together, and I can't remember the exact example of this right now, but like characteristically infantile or characteristically kind of immature children's speech, where they'll say things that you can understand why they think it's said that way, but it really isn't said that way, and it's really cute and everyone loves it. That's an overgeneralization thing. They learned one thing and their nervous system is manifesting this tendency to basically, can I catch all? Can I use this heuristic, this principle, this rule of thumb everywhere? And so it's really interesting that you can witness that a child who learns something that's true in one case, but it doesn't apply in all cases, you can see them misapply that, and you can see them then get responses that maybe they aren't after. They're not doing it to be cute and funny, they're doing it to communicate, and we think it's cute and funny. In the same way, so they got these archaic communication patterns. In the same way, we have kind of archaic adaptation patterns. So we've got the ability, so if we are in the hunter-gatherer train, and it's useful to say, oh, wow, we're really behind here, that experience of being behind, it's not like we go inside and say, okay, thyroid, start proliferating, but that psychological experience has neurological, biological correlates. There's stuff going on, and the thing is, we don't need to know this to be true, that sometimes when we feel a certain way, when we have an emotional experience of some kind, that is what it feels like for the nervous system to be communicating things to tissues of the body. And that's such a profound way of thinking about that. It puts a new meaning, it puts a new filter on what it feels like to be stressed out in the afternoon. You say, what is this? Is this what it feels like to be stuck in traffic? No. This is what it feels like for my signal detection system, which is me, to be detecting and relaying information to my physical body. Now the question is, does that feeling feel good? Is this probably a communication do I want my physical body responding to the message based on how it feels to be relaying that message in this moment in time? To know that your feelings are communication is a tremendously powerful thing, because we spend a lot of time talking about how to communicate with our spouses. We don't spend a lot of time talking about how to communicate with our bodies. How do you communicate with your body? Well, it's called What It's Like to Be You. Improving what it's like to be you in general is improving the quality of the communication with your physical body. body, because your physical body is responding to that experience, because if it weren't, there wouldn't be any reason to have an experience at all. And if there weren't a reason for the experience wouldn't be there. And so that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. So if we go back to the hunter-gatherers and we're trailing behind here and we get upset, we feel left out because we don't say to ourselves, we want to survive so that our genes can pass on, so that those genes can pass on. We're not motivated by that. We're motivated by, I feel a way I don't want to feel. I feel like I'm left out from that group. I need to get up to that group right now. That's the psychological, that's the experience of what it's like to be you, that manifests in biological changes that give you more pep in your step and energy, and you're off and you catch up, What happens though, our genes have not changed very much in the past 100,000 years, right? So our biological programs haven't changed very much in that time. A lot of our tissues, our embryological structures are like way more ancient than that. But if you look at our gene profile over the last 100,000 years, very little change in our genetics, right? It's a very slow process. But what about our lifestyle? Our lifestyle has changed dramatically, unimaginably, logarithmically, right? There have been these changes, in terms of, like you said, getting papers on the desk and everything like that. And so remember the child who knows a few different rules of grammar unconsciously and over-applies those to situations? These tissues know a few different rules about signal detection things, anxiety, discomfort, feeling left out, and they've got a certain set of say biological responses in their toolbox, right? And so why is a person going to get cancer, or why is a person going to have a thyroid problem? Because they are stressed out about turning assignments in on time. Well, it's because the body tissues are overgeneralizing a pattern that was developed 100,000 plus years ago to not the same situation now, but an approximation. It's the closest thing that you, as a unique expression of genetic material, has encountered in your life to this thing that happened 100, 200, 300, 400,000 years ago. And so I think that recognizing, it's funny too that you said, well, it sounds poetic, and I remember having that intuition. I remember saying, wait a minute, this appeals almost to me too much for it to be true, right? Because that's not really how that thing, but then if you think about it, what is poetry? What is metaphor? What is all of that stuff? It's psychological outgrowth. What is psychology? It's an outgrowth. It's an expression of, a manifestation of, a component of the signal detection system of the nervous system. And so there's this really interesting thing. So I don't think that the body believes that there's a separation between body and mind, even if we do. And because the body doesn't believe it, it's not true. It's not there. So even if we think, that's metaphorical, that's that, but then, there's, at the end of the day, there's science and Petri dishes and charts and statistics, and that's really what determines what happens. Very often that stuff is a mathematical retrospective attempt to explain things after they've already happened, which is very different than the living, breathing kind of tissues that are going on. And the interesting thing about that is that the body and the tissues of the body doesn't really care if there's a lack of evidence on PubMed about whether and to what extent the body and tissues respond to the experience of the individual to whom those body and tissues belong, or from whom the individual is kind of growing. And so just recognizing that and thinking in that terms to kind of deduce from that way that there is no such thing as like superflative capacity. There's not, or superfluous capacity. We don't have the ability to do things, to feel things, to think things, to experience things that aren't really relevant to our survival in some way. And so when you start filtering everything about what it's like to be you through the lens of, okay, if my body, if the tissues of my body, if the cells of my body are responding to this information that I'm experiencing as experience, but what ultimately is a response to feedback coming from my external reality, if my body is interpreting this in terms of making adaptations to promote my survival, what kind of adaptations might my body be making? And when you start asking yourself those kind of questions, you start getting very interesting answers, and you start experiencing connections between, it's really, a lot of this is about eroding this erroneous, what is it? It's not just a distinct, it's a dissociation between our experience and our the biological reality of who we are. And the reality is that our psychological experience, what it is like to be you, is a manifestation of your biology, your organism, and that organism's efforts to communicate with, gather information from, and assess and interpret that information from the environment in a way that ensures the organism's survival. And so when you recognize that, it's like there's a one-to-one relationship here. Subjective experience matters so much. Where do you think it's coming from? That's the thing for me, is like, where do you think the subjective experience is coming from? It's not irrelevant. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to measure. Like you said, it's so individual. And so people who have a lot of degrees people who work at the Institute of Health, they don't like to talk about things that are hard to measure. They want to be able to say sweeping statements in a sound bite that can say, all right, government, public policy, what are we going to do about this, right? That's behavior oriented, that's eat grains, that's don't eat the fat, don't, and you see from one thing to the next, those things just change and change and change and change and change. The inconvenient reality is every individual's experience is different because every individual's neurology is different and every individual's interfacing with information coming in is different. And so it's inconvenient, but it's true that it's really important to improve what it's like to be you and to learn the impact that quality of experience is having on your physical organism.
And it's so radically different than anything we've ever been told before. But when the thing is it makes so much sense and it feels so good to process things in this way, to understand, wow, my body's having an experience and that is being communicated. This is a form of communication, how I'm interpreting what's going on, and again, these things can happen in a split second in a way that you are not aware of it. You may not even be aware that you had a conflict until after the fact when you start having symptoms, when you start, because I didn't realize I had a conflict about 2 weeks ago, and I didn't realize in the moment that it was a conflict. It was just kind of, I ended up coughing, and I was like, and in that moment, my body had a response. And then when I started getting a sore throat, which was the sign that I had been processing a conflict, I was like, oh, this stinks that I have a sore throat. And then my nose started responding. And so there's all these different levels of like, what is going on? How am I perceiving my environment? And so how you feel about the things that you do matter more than the things that you do. And so this is how you can make sense out of people who do things all the wrong way from a health perspective. We think, oh, well, this person, they should be extremely unhealthy. This person should have cancer all over their body because they smoke and drink and don't. But how they feel about it, how that individual feels about their activities matter more than the activities.
And not just those activities specifically, it's how they feel about life in general. It's how they're responding to the information that's coming in general. I saw someone, you were talking about, what was it, thought trumps the food that you eat or something like that. You had a post that was really interesting. And someone responded, I don't think very much about how I eat. Well, you see, the way that your body responds to food, the way that your body utilizes its adaptive capacity, it's not relevant only with regard to what you think about food. It's relevant to what you experience about everything. That's the key thing. You know what I'm saying? Is that it's not, well, I only think positive thoughts about food. Well, if you go off and you're experiencing tremendous anxiety, or you're really threatened, or you're really having a loss conflict or something like that in other areas, it doesn't really matter sort of how healthy you're eating. What's going to happen is that your body's going to take those nutrients in, and it's going to use those nutrients to run a biological program that's going to look to you like a disease, and you're going to say, I don't understand why this is happening. I ate all the most wonderful things in the world, and the body said, thank you very much for providing us so much wonderful celery, because now we can use it to run this biological program to respond to this experience that you're having that says that you're living in a threatening environment. And so that's the thing, is that a lot of people, and like us coming from like a natural health and the chiropractic background, it's not, there are people in the field, there are patients, and there are sometimes doctors who will have health crises or have health problems, and it's not at all unusual. It's such a, it's a sad thing, because so often you can tell that these are people who are not only dealing with a fear about a health issue, they're also kind of struggling to kind of reconcile their understanding about themselves and about health and about what they're teaching people and about what they're sort of basing everything about their life, from their professional life, their financial life, their personal life, their ideological, philosophical life. All of that stuff seems to be being contradicted, but the truth is really it's not. You know what I'm saying? It's that stuff really is good and it's important, but your experience matters a whole lot too. And the stuff that you are taking in, the health things that you are doing, is facilitating your body doing its thing. And what your body's thing is, right? The programs that your body's running has a whole lot to do with your experience. And so it's possible to get your body to be really efficient at running adaptive programs, right? And so if you don't want that happening, the thing is, address the experience to which the body and the tissues are adapting, and then all of a sudden the body will become manifesting the type of health that we really want to see, which is that kind of thriving health experience. And so that's an interesting thing, though. I mean, I know personally, like if I were to be doing, this used to be true actually for me. I never had a serious health concern, but I would get sick from time to time, and I would feel kind of like I was getting like my body let me down. It's like, come on, you haven't eaten any chocolate chip cookies, you know what I'm saying? You've been eating all these smoothies and all these greens and all this great stuff, and now you're not feeling good. What's the deal there? But looking back, it makes perfect sense. And it's so funny, too, to watch the segue from like my pre-chiropractic time when I would say, I'm sick, I must have come into contact with someone's child, or that jerk who sneezed in the elevator, and I felt like, you'd feel like real antipathy for these people. You would say, if that guy wasn't there, and you had all this evidence that it was true because you would scan your personal experience and you would say, okay, what outside of me, what germ, what source, what contagion is responsible for me being laid up right now? And you'd always have an explanation for it, right? It was him, it was them, it was going around, it's this, it's that, it's every January this happens. The interesting thing is when you start thinking in this way, you start finding evidence that this is true. You start saying, okay, given this, what would be the explanation for what's going on here? And it's a lot less tenuous. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you and I have an argument, you know what I'm saying? And then a day or two later, we resolve it. We resolve the argument a day or two after that. My shoulder starts feeling uncomfortable. That was like one of the big things for me, was that like I was not, Melissa's interested in German New Medicine now, so let me get really interested about it too, right? I was very passive in developing an interest in this material, because my whole thing was like, if it has merit, if it's interesting, I'm just going to let her do her thing. She's really into it, and she'll talk to me about it, and I'll just let myself be as interested or as I am. The one that really got me, though, was this shoulder thing, right? Every time we have what we call like a tiff, a disagreement, there's some friction, there's some tension, there's some strife going on, we always resolve it right away. We never just kind of leave it and then say, maybe we'll talk about it later. We always resolve it right then. And like literally, there is this kind of like really strange shoulder discomfort that'll start manifesting in my body. And when I knew about that before you told me that was relationship related. And it happens every single time, and it's just a really interesting thing. And so when you begin to understand that, like, literally your body's always responding appropriately, it's responding appropriately to communication. The communication's occurring in the form of your personal experience. You then get into, okay, well, what am I going to do about this experience? And that's really what I teach. And that's what I was teaching before I knew it had any kind of direct physical implications, which is, how do I deliberately create an experience that is, one, what I want it to be, and two, that is what we call anti-fragile. It would say it's not fragile, right? It's not subject to the ups and downs and the vicissitudes of daily life, other people not cooperating with you, things not going the way you want them to. How can you come into contact with something that would have, that's the thing about a shock and a conflict, is that it's relative. You don't have to be conflicted about coming into, contact with a certain feedback, a certain information. Now, a lot of people would be, and if that's your standard and your criteria, then you can be too. But it's possible, really, to meet anything that happens in your life with this kind of equanimity, or this emotional acceptance. You don't have to resist those things. And that's one of the skills that we teach specifically, is about how to not only improve your life, but to make it anti-fragile, to make it invulnerable to these perturbations that for so many people set off these special programs.
Yeah, and so it's this awareness of self, because most health forms, it's like, it's always putting it off on somebody else, and you can even do that in this, like, oh, well, you caused a conflict with me and now I'm sick and it's your fault.
Yeah.
And so this is all about personal responsibility and taking responsibility for what it's like to be you and your perceptions, interpretations of the situation in which you have put yourself, in which you find yourself. And so, there's so many different angles and things to talk about, though, because here's you as an individual having, interactions and communications with other people and figuring out, your own conflicts is really first and foremost, because whatever you've got conflicts about, if you've got children, their conflicts are likely an outgrowth of things that are going on with you. Like, your conflicts have a trickle-down effect to your children. And so that's why, put your own oxygen mask on first. Figure out what is going on with you. How are you seeing the world? How are you perceiving? What physical symptoms do you have? Have you had in the past? So that you can get to know yourself. What are my major conflicts? How do I tend to respond to things? And figuring out ways of raising your threshold. We'll talk about different ways that we raise our own thresholds. But then it gets really interesting when you think about children, and that's a huge, topic all of its own, of how a child has interpreted something, because, every single individual has to take care of their own perception. But for a child who's so unaware, they're not even aware they just are perception. Mm-hmm. And we were actually, our dog was he was throwing up last week, and it's like, what conflict did he have? Like, what, what, before it was like, oh, what food, what thing did he get in? But he's an animal, and he's responding to his environment. He has conflicts, and he has issues too. And so...
He has issues.
And so it's like, oh, well, that's really interesting. How do you figure out what kind of conflict your dog or your child had who can't even really communicate with you? And so it's like, it's the environment. Okay, what environment is it? How could they have perceived it? What can we do differently so that this child, that this animal is having a better, more comfortable experience where they, aren't being conflicted? And so there are so many different levels of awareness, but that's what this is all about, is like, oof, now I can become aware of when I have conflicts. And really, it's kind of very interesting when you do come across conflicts. Like for me, and this sore throat, like nose stuff, when I get like any breakout, it's like, oh, how, what happened? What was the split second in time? What was that moment? What was that conflict that led to this? And how can I, next time something like that potentially happens, how can I feel differently about it? And I've been able to do that, to like say, okay, you know what, here we are, and I realize that this is we're kind of having words, but I don't want my body to respond in that way. So it's like being conscious of my physiology, being conscious of how I'm feeling. Can I feel better? So this is happening, like, okay, so I've created a situation where we're having this conversation. Can I feel differently about this in this moment? And so that's just like this, how much can you tap into your experience? How much can you be aware of yourself and how you're responding and how you're feeling? And can you, consciously talk yourself into feeling a different way?
That's something really funny about this, and I think that there are patterns of detection, which is to say, someone who will just notice the slightest thing that you do and try and be really either offended and go after you, aggressive, or they'll be very kind of, they'll try to be propitiating, try to calm you down, try to say, everything okay? Is everything okay? And you're like, God, yeah, everything's fine. They have patterns of detection. So they are so primed to detect signs of not okayness or signs of the other person being offended that they are really detecting it. And then the other thing is there are patterns of interpretation. And so given the fact that I've detected this signal, this information from my environment, what am I going to decide that means? So like you're really neurologically primed for that stuff. And it's like a tripwire. And it's like when it gets tripped, it's, it starts the whole thing going. Now you can stop it. You have to first kind of know what's going on. And it's funny too, it reminded me of the whole artificial intelligence thing. And we've got this whole big thing where we're really worried about artificial intelligence right now. We're concerned that like computers are going to become super intelligent and reach this point where where their knowledge and their intelligence becomes self-perpetuating, and we're worried that basically they'll decide that human beings aren't that important and that computers matter a lot more, and that's something that we don't really... Basically, it's a concern that the values of the artificial intelligence won't align with their own values, and so they'll go off and be much smarter than us and everything. And the funny thing to me about that is that we are the artificial intelligence. The reason that we know to be worried about it is that we are it, right? We experience ourselves as this kind of like this ego. We experience ourselves as like this point of consciousness kind of like behind our eyes, somewhere like in the middle of our head. And that's who we are. I mean, I have hands, I have toes, I have a body, but I am this point of consciousness. That's what artificial intelligence is, right? We are this organism, we're this body, we're this animal who sort of had the signal detection system. It's like you said in the very beginning, I think it's in one of our other presentations that we did, it used to be toward pleasure, away from pain. It used to be toward light, toward warmth, away from cold, away from threatening things, sharp things, towards soft things, towards things that are food, away from things that think we're food. And essentially, our personalities right now, all of the beautiful art, all of the wonderful feelings, all of the wonderful philosophical and spiritual and religious ideas that we've had and like that culture has produced is an elaboration on that basic theme. It's a manifestation of an increasingly complexified neurological system. And there's a certain point where that signal detection system, the neurology, becomes so complex and it creates worlds within itself. It forgets about the fact that it's kind of that it's growing out of and subservient to this body. I mean, you know what? Like computers become so intelligent and complex that they forget that human beings made them, and they start thinking we own the human beings. The human beings are resources. It's very funny that we think of our body. We don't think of like our sense of self as serving an organism. We think of this organism. We think of this body as being subservient to us. And so I think it's a really funny thing that we are that kind of artificial intelligence, very powerful. The thing is to be aware of it, though, and to be aware that you're creating worlds within your mind, and that the worlds within your mind are affecting the world outside of your mind. And when people say, oh, it's all just made up, oh, it's psychosomatic, understanding that that's the most powerful thing there is in the whole world, and that when you start thinking things, you start feeling things, your body, the physical part of reality, right, called your body, is already responding to it. And it also is going to be responding to it in a way that's going to prime the body to do behaviors that are going to operate on the world around you, situations, circumstances, other people, in a way that will maximally ensure your survival. But again, it's running software. We're running software that's hundreds of thousands of years old. And so a lot of times the body's incredible responses to everyday challenges, everyday signals that we encounter, it's incredible that it can do it. But we're kind of looking at it like, geez, why are you doing that? Why are you proliferating all those cells? I'm just a little bit worried about my kid's first day at kindergarten. I don't need cell proliferation going on here. Well, the body is interpreting it in the context of an extremely, almost unimaginably lengthy evolutionary biological history. Now, when you understand that, it's like, well, all these metaphorical descriptions and all of these connections, all these kind of archaic responses that the body is having to what seem to us to be kind of banal, everyday life circumstances, that begin to make a lot more sense.
Oh yeah. So part of the self-healing support group is answering questions and actual real life circumstances that people are dealing with that they realize, ooh, I think this is a conflict for me. I'm pretty sure that I have an ongoing conflict. So the interesting thing about a conflict, so one, it's identifying it. If you come to this information, and a lot of people come across it because they are actively dealing with a disease process. They have cancer, they've got a chronic illness, they've got something going on, and they're searching for answers. And so the first step is to become aware of your conflict. And then find out, am I still conflict active? And so most people, when you are conflict active, when it is going on, you're typically not aware of any symptoms, because honestly, from the biological perspective, you don't have time for the symptoms. You don't have time to be worried about anything. You are solely fixated on resolving the situation. And that's what your body is doing. It's like, we're going to do this thing. We're going to do this thing for a period of time because we want you to resolve the situation as quickly as possible. That's why when you are in conflict activity, if it's kind of a prolonged, you can't sleep, you've got cold hands, you're not hungry, like your body is in fight or flight mode. Your sympathetic nervous system is active. You are not getting the rest and digest and heal of the evening like you're supposed to. Your circadian rhythm, your day-night neurological rhythm is stuck in sympathetic mode. And it's going to be there until you resolve the conflict, whether it's a natural resolution, whatever the thing was, it's gone now, or you're in a different place in your life, or like the problem resolved itself, it's finished, or you're going to have to figure out a way to emotionally change your stance, change the way you feel about it, change your perception for something that, say, can't be practically resolved. So like if somebody that you love passed away, your processing of that, you could stay in grief and loss and in that conflict activity for indefinitely. And the people that, unfortunately, they say, you can die in that state. If you never get to a conflict resolution, what's happening is you're not resting, your body's not repairing, it's not rebuilding, it's in fight or flight mode. And that's when, you lose a lot of weight and you get really skinny and your body's just kind of like, it's breaking itself down, trying to resolve a situation. And so when you remember that, it's like, oh wow, so this isn't just like me just letting something go because it's better for me psychologically. It's like, this is you giving your body the signal that I'm safe, everything's okay. Mm-hmm. We can heal, we can repair, we can rebuild. And so a lot of people, you can do really all of the work of GNM by yourself. If you are aware of the principles, if you have some measure of conscious awareness and you just start to implement it, you can start to see you can truly heal by yourself. Other people will like help with someone else looking at the timeline of what they have going on, kind of saying, okay, well, I can see this connecting to this, and asking questions. It's really a lot of detective work of drawing out of you what happened when it started, when, getting back to that initial conflict and figuring out, is this something that's still ongoing? Because you can have a hanging conflict, so that's when you're conflict active, just you keep it happened and you have not let it go. You've not healed from it. You've not resolved it. And so you've got to find a conflict resolution if you want to get your body into healing. And then once it's in healing, that's when all the symptoms come up. That's typically when a person finds out that they're sick, is when they're inflamed, they're swollen, there's pain. That's when all of the stuff seems to be going wrong. And that's truly when your body is healing. And so your ability to recognize, oh, my body isn't healing. It's really uncomfortable. Healing kind of sucks, but it's not sickness. And when you realize, okay, this really uncomfortable phlegm.
You know what it is? It's really unpleasant for the signal detection system, which is what you experience yourself to be. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
That the body's just doing its thing, and that like the big toe itself doesn't hurt when the big toe feels like it hurts to you. The big toe is just healing, and it's swelling because it's doing what it needs to do. But the healing phase is a wonderful time to be the body, and it's a bad time to be the signal detection system. It's a bad time to be because your physical body is a part of, and that's the amazing thing about this nervous system, is that it's detecting signals from outside the environment, but it's also detecting signals from within the body. And so that's a really funny thing, is that when something happens and they've got an adaptive, something or other going on somewhere, and then the conflict is resolved, and so then we can say, okay, all that we can tear that stuff down, we don't really need that anymore. Then the signal detection system, what we have, which is so advanced and so sensitive, said, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? Oh no, that's some kind of a problem, right? Well, what's that? Well, if you have an experience of that being a problem, what are you doing? Well, you're communicating to the body, once again, oh, we got a problem going on here. And so it's that capacity to modulate your experience of healing, modulate your experience of pain, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, whether it's whatever it is, so that when you understand what it is, you can feel it. You don't have to pretend like you don't feel it. You can feel it, but you give it a different meaning. You understand that it's a part of, not apart from, the healing process. You understand that it's a sign that things are resolving, not a sign that things are starting up, that you don't want to have starting up. You've got to, that's that thing, is that it's almost like, it reminds me of these like movies or something like that, where there's like a young child that's got some kind of incredible psychic ability or something. And you know what I mean? They're young and temperamental, and when they get angry, they scream and burst windows. And you know what I'm talking about? Like that stuff. That's really almost like what it is that we are so powerful in our ability to feel, and our feelings are such a powerful communication to the physical body. Our experience is such a powerful communication to truly the deep tissues of our organism, that it's very important that we learn to think and feel and to experience physical feelings and emotional stuff in a way that communicates kind of what it is that we want our body to be responding to.
Yeah. So when your body is in healing, just that awareness, my body isn't healing. So that you don't get reconflicted, because that's what happens to most people is, and this is kind of the problem with going to the doctor for everything, and people just being, so on alert for any little thing going on. They rush to the doctor, they have a scan, they have a scope, they have and this is why we get more and more cancers diagnosed every year. It's not because more cancers are happening necessarily. It's because we're doing more probing, we're doing more peering, we're doing more looking and touching and looking for things. These things are happening all the time. Seriously, they are happening all the time. I know for a fact I've had cervical cancer. I know for a fact I've had cancer. I know for a fact I've had heart disease.
It's the biological process that could be diagnosed.
That could be diagnosed. And I didn't get to that point of diagnosis, but I know I've had these conflicts, and I know I've experienced symptoms that, again, if they're kind of a low level and you don't tend to be a person who like runs to the doctor for everything, you're kind of like, okay, well, this is a little weird. Let's see what happens. When that's happening, when you're like noticing some kind of difference in your body, there is something happening. Your body is responding to some type of conflict that you were completely unaware that there was a connection there. But when you see it now, it's like, oh my goodness, now that makes so much sense. And seeing that, I know that I've had these conflicts. It's like, wow, now I can see why so many more people would be getting diagnosed year after year. And then the diagnosis itself sets off another conflict. And so that's when we get into the whole, theory of metastasis. And we think that these cancers can just go anywhere in the body, and they're dangerous and they can spread. But what's happening is we're getting conflict on top of conflict. And so that's generating a new biological program, a new biological response. And so that's why awareness of this whole process and your just ability to step back and just look at it. And that's the thing, is it doesn't even have to change what you do. you just have to think about differently about what it is that you're doing, and does this make sense? And that's the thing, is I don't want people to do things that don't make sense to them. And a lot of people end up doing so much stuff that they're just like, somebody told me to do this. It doesn't really feel right to me in my heart and my spirit. Like, I don't want to do this, but people have made me feel you're responsible for not doing this. And so, you kind of have all of these conflicting opinions, and really and as far as my advice, what I give to my clients and the people that I work with, it's like, you've got to do really what feels best to you. Whatever that is, whatever you feel the most comfortable about, whatever makes sense to you intellectually. Because if you do things based on, just what somebody randomly said and it doesn't make sense to you, you're going to have, these doubts, these fears, these worries. And so that's why it's really just kind of wrapping your mind around different ideas and seeing, does this practically make sense to me? Can I work this out in my own mind? Because, that's the thing about a lot of stuff in medicine is like, well, none of this makes sense. I'm just going to go ahead and trust you. But things can make sense to you. You're not, no one, I don't think, is incapable of understanding how their body functions. It's not typically explained in a way that's easy for you to understand. So the specific issue I wanted to address today, or the specific conflict that somebody in our self-healing support group has been dealing with, is a feeling of powerlessness in regards to family members. And so again, this is a topic that how many people can relate to, feeling powerless about, maybe your in-laws, people that you have to deal with, some kind of family members that are extremely frustrating for you, that like, it's kind of like, well, what do I do? My hands are tied. I'm powerless to, I can't have these people out of my life. They actually live right around the corner from me. They're in my life all the time. How do I deal with these people who they're not loving, they're not as kind as I'd like them to be, they always give me a hard time, I never feel like I can let my guard down around them, and the moment that I do, I get these comments, these things happen, and I'm just continually conflicted. And so that's where you can stay in a place where like you feel like maybe you've resolved it, or like you had kind of a moment and you just have, oh, okay, I'm gonna just accept them the way that they are, and then you're good and your body's back in healing. But then you encounter them again, and then you're just like reactivated with that conflict. And so that's how someone can stay in that back and forth zone of never fully getting through stuff. And so we wanted to break down like the components of this negative experience and the different places that you can intervene consciously in your perception of this situation. And so this is kind of like the really good stuff of, what does it look like to take a situation like this and to do some perceptual alchemy on the way that you perceive and process it. So
one thing, just by way of kind of preamble, this is just a general relationship heuristic. I work with a lot of people who struggle with stuff like this, and I've noticed a pattern, and the pattern goes something like this. There's someone in your life who behaves in some way that you don't like, or that's offensive to you, or that just feels it meets your criteria for emotionally resisting the fact that they're doing what they're doing. It meets your criteria for getting angry. It meets your criteria for feeling some way you don't want to feel about yourself, about them, saying things, doing things that you don't really want to do. And what happens is, in the relationship dynamic, very often the person who is kind of on the receiving end, the person who feels kind of oppressed by this other individual, will kind of, by degrees, increase the amount that they're willing to tolerate. And it looks like what they're doing is, they think that, they're trying to improve, but really what they're doing is they're giving themselves an opportunity to be more upset when the person exceeds their new metric. I'm going to increase my magnanimity by 10%. So that when the person pushes me beyond that, I can be even more upset than I was before, because look how hard I tried to be nice to you, and whatever I do, it's never enough. And one of the big things that freed me, and that this, sometimes clients are kind of reluctant to go for this, but when they go for this, they experience this exhilarating freedom. If you got someone who just always pushes your button, start playing with the idea that it's your responsibility that the button is there in the first place, which is to say, if I have certain criteria, if there are certain things other people can do that will get me to the point of doing things internally, thinking things, feeling things, behaving in ways that do not serve me, it's my responsibility, because I'm the one who has control over the fact that I have criteria for emotionally resisting certain things. Everybody does to one degree or another, but but you can systematically kind of work those things out and eliminate them. So that's the real problem. The first thing is to acknowledge is that not that the person's doing certain things, but that you have set up criteria that involve those certain things that let you know it's time to emotionally resist and suffer over the fact that a person, a situation, or a circumstance is as it or they are at a given moment in time. Now, that's specifically what's going on. In general, what's going on, the general problem is that you have criteria for doing that which doesn't serve you, which if you really start thinking about it, using those terms in that way, it seems very strange. Why would I have certain circumstances that I then look at and say, okay, that means it's time for me to start thinking about things in a way that causes me to feel really bad? That seems like a strange thing for a person who is autonomous, for a person who has complete dominion over their own experience to do. Yet we do it when we're operating unconsciously. But when you start operating consciously, you start recognizing it's actually, the problem is not that they're doing this thing. The problem is that when I see them doing this thing, when I hear them doing this thing, when I hear about them doing this thing, I say, okay, that's it, F this. I'm not going to keep trying anymore. If they're going to behave that way, I don't care how I feel. I'm going to let them know what I think about it. I'm going to say to myself, I'm going to say to other people, and so on and so forth. So there's this certain criteria. One of the things that I teach people is emphasizing and proving what it's like to be you above all and everything else, right? And if that means letting someone go unpunished, by withholding or by not really giving them your contempt or your disapproval, because doing that degrades the quality of what it's like to be you, you've got to be willing to do that. You've got to be willing to say, I'm willing to let things slide at a social level so that my experience at an experiential level can be better than it has been in the past. That's just kind of the general approach.
That's the first one. That they are other than they should be, and they must be different.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about this in sequence. Okay. So you had that situation, right? So the in-laws are behaving in a way that they're hard to get along with, right? And the person's feeling, what was the conflict? They're
powerless, hands tied, difficult family. Like, what can you do about it? They're in my life, kind of no matter what. I mean, I'd like to move across the country, but I can't.
Okay. So the impression that I had about this is that this is a situation of experiential suffering. It's got three components, right? It's based on three faulty presuppositions, and I like to give people options because sometimes it's a lot easier for you to approach the mountain from one angle than from another, depending on what the unique sort of idiosyncrasies of your personality are, the specific situations, the specific circumstances, and all that stuff. So the first presupposition here that's getting this person in trouble, that's causing the first ingredient in this person's experience that they don't want to be having, is that they believe that this person, these people, must be other than they are. They're critical, and it's not acceptable that they're critical. They need to be more accepting. They don't like the in-laws don't like this person, and that's not okay. That's a problem. They must feel about me differently than in fact that they do. And that's a general pattern that people do that causes suffering. You scan your environment for something to disapprove of, to disallow, to say, all right, let's see, what about reality? What about what is? Am I going to give my attention to? Am I going to focus on? And am I going to emotionally resist the fact that at this moment in time, this person, this situation, this circumstance is as it is or is as they are? And recognizing that your stress is not coming from in-laws who are mistreating you. Your stress is coming from this idea that something should be other than it is. They should not be the way that they are. That seems like a strange thing, and sometimes people say, I'm not willing to be blamed for something that they're doing. This isn't about blame, this is about responsibility. It's about your ability to respond to the quality of what it's like to be you in a way that improves the quality of what it's like to be you. Recognizing, and just go and watch your experience around these people. Go and watch how you feel in response to them saying and doing certain things. And notice that there's what they do, and then there's a voice inside your head or something that you say to yourself. They say something mean. You say, see, that's exactly the kind of thing that they shouldn't be doing. It is fundamentally, intrinsically unacceptable that they do that. I can't not resist the fact that they said that, and to observe where your suffering comes from. The suffering comes from the fact that you're telling yourself a story and you're believing that story. You're being hypnotized, enchanted by the story that says they must be other than they are. So you present yourself with this kind of a double bind situation, and you experience kind of the emotional consequences of placing yourself there. So the second thing, and this is built sequentially, these people must be other than they are. That's mistake one, or that's faulty presupposition one. Faulty presupposition number two is they must be other than they are, and it's my job to find a way to force them to be the way that I think they should be. So, I got to tell myself, these people need to be different. This situation, it's not even okay that it doesn't need to change over time. It needs to change 5 minutes ago. That's an impossibility, right? And then I say it's my job to find a way of forcing, of conniving, of cajoling, of influencing them. It's my job to find a way to get them to change. And very often, especially, I mean, in social situations in general, in family situations in particular, in in-law situations in extra particular, you are really constrained in what you can get away with saying or communicating or of asking of those people, right? So it's not like you can go up and say, you're being critical. Here's 5 examples of you being critical. I demand you stop that right now. Now let's have a pleasant, good luck with that. It's probably not going to work. And because of the fact that this person they are feeling powerless, right? It's because they're so narrowly confined. It's like, I imagine probably what's happening is that the in-laws are behaving in ways that are socially, ostensibly acceptable, but that are kind of calibrated in a way to make this person feel unwelcome, unwanted, unliked, etc. But she may not be in a situation where she can call them out on those things because people maintain plausible deniability a lot of the time. They will mistreat you in a way that's just just under the radar. They get away with they know just how much they can get away with without having to own up to what they're doing, and they just stay there, and it's so frustrating. And you're watching, and you're just saying, yeah, just come above that line, just come above that line, just get to the point of it being undeniable because I'm going to call you on it. And they never do, and you're just like, why don't you just really be overt with it just once, because I'd respect you more, because then I could have it out with you. That's where that powerlessness is coming from, right? Because you have this sensation that they're playing the game so perfectly that they're getting 80, that there's nothing that you can do about it. But assuming they need to be other than they are, that's a problem. And then assuming that it's your job to get them to be other than they are, you are 100% responsible for your experience of other people's behavior. You are 0% responsible for other people's behavior. And when you recognize that, you can really stop trying to, and here's the thing too, the problem with not being able to in that situation effectively elicit changes in their behavior, make them be nicer to you, or convince them to be nicer to you. When we believe that it's our job to do something, and when we also can't find anything to do, or we feel powerless to do anything, the thing that we tend to default to is the grown-up equivalent of the toddler who in a tantrum holds their breath until they pass out. We emotionally resist the situation. It's kind of emotional breath holding. We basically say, internally, we adopt this posture of emotional resistance. We say, nope. I don't even accept the fact that you just said what you said. I don't accept the fact you are the way that you are. I don't accept the fact that my husband puts up with you treating me this way. I don't accept. I don't even accept the fact that I don't accept it. I don't accept my bad feelings. And we just hold ourselves in opposition to what is, to reality. And that's like grinding gears. It feels terrible. And the more we grind those gears together, the worse it feels, the more irritating it becomes. And what happens is we associate the emotional suffering that we experience as a result of grinding our own gears together with the people who are providing us with the stimulus that let us know it's time to grind our gears. And it's this kind of negative self-perpetuating thing. And the problem is, if the baby holds its breath and passes out, well, then it starts breathing again. But you can do this, until you literally wear yourself out. And so just recognizing that this negative experience is built on these things that don't have to be true. It's not true that they have to be other than they are. They just are as they are. Reality is, what is what is. You can change your experience of what is without having there be any change whatsoever in the actual facts of the external matter. The second thing is that, not only do they not need to change, if they do need to change, it's not your job to make it happen. It's your job to create an experience of these people that is acceptable and ideally even enjoyable to you. Now, most people never really consider that we spend all of our time figuring out how can I get Melissa to do what I want her to do. And, I used to think that way a lot. I was very often frustrated. I was even relatively effective at getting people to change their behavior if I really wanted to. But a lot of the time I was frustrated because they wouldn't always do it. And even if they did, it's not satisfying. What really, for me, changed my life was when I started saying, how can I experience Melissa doing whatever she's doing, whatever she is spontaneously moved and motivated and inspired to be doing in a given day? How can I experience that in a way that improves what it's like to be me? When I gave my attention to improving my experience, I had all the power in the world, had all the control in the world, had all the responsibility in the world. If at the end of the day my experience of Melissa doing whatever it was she was doing wasn't what I wanted to do, it was nobody's situation but mine. It was just me. And the next day I could try it and I could tinker with it and I could do something to make it even better than that. So that's the second one. What's the third one?
That was actually the way to change it is to emotional resistance.
Oh, okay. So I kind of blended them together. So the first one's the assumption they must be other than they are, which is kind of a specific example of the general belief that some aspect of reality ever has to be other than it is. The second thing there is that it's my job to make them be other than they are. And the third thing is that the best way to make them be other than they are, the best way to change reality is to resist the fact that reality is as it is. It's actually the best way to hold that part of reality steady and to create a very negative experience of it and to maintain that negative experience of reality too. And so I think the thing for me is that, and I think we talked about this, right? That when in deconstructing that, you either go top down or bottom up. We can either say, let me experiment with, let me play with deconstructing this presupposition, this assumption that these people must be other than they are. Maybe it's okay that they are some way that's not okay. Maybe it's okay that they behave in a way that's unacceptable. Maybe I can accept the fact that they behave in ways that I regard as unacceptable. Maybe I can accept responsibility for improving my experience of other people behaving in ways that I don't think are acceptable. Can you accept the totality, the ecology, the gestalt of the situation? Can you say, well, I'm married to this person. He has these parents. These are all just facts. They behave in ways that aren't really totally fair. The question is though, are you going to use that as an excuse to allow yourself to create an experience of what it's like to be you that's less good than it could be? Now, you're going to have to break down some old patterns. You're going to have to get a little wacky. You're going to have to use your imagination. You're going to have to do things differently than you've done up to this point to create an experience that's different than the one you've created up until this point. And it's not that sometimes people say, well, why should I have to do that? Well, it's not really about whether you should have to do it or not. It's the fact that it sounds like they're kind of jerks sometimes. And the question is whether and to what extent we're going to get you leveraging your internal resources in a way that allows you to create an experience of jerks and happy people and nice people and everyone in between that is consistent with the experience that you want to have. Because the thing about your experience is that you're the only one experiencing it, right? And you're the only one that can really improve it. And when you recognize that, it really just simplifies things so much. So we can address that one, or we can go down to the bottom one. We can address the fact that we think that emotional resistance is a means and a mechanism of changing aspects of our external reality. It's not. What you resist persists. Where your focus goes, your emotionally charged focus, your energy flows, which is to say that we talked about too, those patterns of detection and patterns of interpretation of those signals and those stimuli, you have almost certainly patterns of detecting from these people. I mean, yeah, I know they're doing certain things, right? But your neurology really becomes calibrated to pick up on those things and to interpret them in ways that are generating an experience that you really, really, really don't like. And when you really deliberately, consciously say, I'm going to untether my experience from the behavior of these people. I don't have to, my experience doesn't need to mirror the behavior of people who predictably behave in jerky, unpleasant, unfair, unkind ways. And when you recognize that, you start kind of running the show. I mean, what's happening right now is that they're what's it called? Do you lead in dancing? Yeah, you lead, right? They're leading the dance and you're following suit. They behave this way, so I feel this way. Oh, they behave that way. Oh, I feel that way. Oh, they're a little nicer today, so I go back this way. Oh, but then they were a jerk, so I go back that way. And what you need to do is kind of take the lead of your own experience. And it really, like the number of things that we're not doing just because they haven't occurred to us really would just blow your mind. A lot of people don't deliberately say, well, if I was taking my cues from this jerk, I would be feeling this way. I'd be feeling pretty bad. I'd be feeling pretty angry, pretty agitated, pretty frustrated. But I don't want to feel those ways. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to break step. I'm not going to walk in lockstep here. I'm going to break ranks, and I'm going to go consciously, deliberately work on feeling some other way. And yeah, it works really well.
It's a beautiful thing, and it's taking you, and that's really what the essence of all of these videos are going to be about in this self-healing support group, is taking you from what is fragile, which is I feel vulnerable, I feel weak, I feel helpless, I feel like I'm not in control. I mean, those are all of the states of being. That's like the scared little mouse. That's just it's prey. And that's really what it is. It's I feel like a victim. I feel like prey. I feel attacked. I feel hurt. I feel scared. I feel vulnerable. All of those feelings, all of those emotions, those are signals to your nervous system that you are not safe, that we need to adapt, we need to get out of this circumstance. And so the thing is that if that's your personality, if that's your way of life, if that is just how you do you, and you don't know how to do you in any other way, that's why this group and what we'll be teaching you is so powerful, because it takes you we really love this whole concept of anti-fragility, which the book by Nassim Taleb is absolutely wonderful, because he just talks about how, and this is, he applies it to all sorts of different areas, but when I listen to the book, all I hear is like about how it applies to health, of being, fragile, being very, vulnerable, and prone to multiple conflict shocks. So again, someone that's got chronic illness, chronic sickness, that's chronic conflict shocks and chronic relapse back into old conflicts. And so as you raise your awareness of this, the goal isn't even necessarily to be robust. And robust is just like, you just don't really care, like things happen and it just doesn't even affect you. But to be anti-fragile is that for things to happen, for people to behave in undesirable ways, but for you, because you internally, you are so in control of your internal experience, that even if a person says something, you are able to take that and literally tell yourself what you would have preferred to hear from them, and not be fazed by the fact that somebody said something to you, that they behaved, they treated you in a way that you didn't like, that it doesn't even it doesn't just even bounce off. You take it. You take whatever life gives you, and you've got this ability. You are this perceptual alchemist to say, listen, you know what? No matter what happens, no matter what bill comes in the mail, no matter what this person says to me, I know that I am able to take that raw material and turn it into something wonderful. And it doesn't make you, inhuman. Like, you don't have to, a lot of times the way we respond to certain things like deaths, they're very much like how you think you should respond. A lot of people feel bad for not feeling bad about, certain things happening. So even being aware of that, like, am I responding in this way because it's how I think I should respond? And am I feeling any amount of like guilt or badness because I don't actually feel that way, but I feel like I need to portray this feeling? And there's just so many layers to human experience. And so the more that you can kind of dig into your own layers and dig into what am I doing inside that's creating this internal experience? Do I like it? Do I want more of it? Do I not like it? Do I want less of it? And what can I do in this moment to change that? And realizing first and foremost that you have that power, that all of that power is completely 100% yours, and no one ever can take it from you. And so when you start to realize that, you start to feel strong again. You start to say, wow, like I was feeling like a vulnerable victim for many years. But now I realize that I can use any and everything that happens to me, that when surprising things happen, that it does not have to derail me. It does not have to take me back to, a flashback from 20 years ago, that I can use this new data and just take it in as this is just all data coming in from my environment. I'm a signal detection device. How am I going to use this? And using it all consciously, and just taking all of these things off of autopilot and beginning to consciously engage with your world, with what it's like to be you, with your relationships. And so that's really step one, is like understanding these conflicts, the nature of conflicts, and all of the myriad ways that you can respond to everything that happens. Do you want to add anything before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I think one thing is just, I say I don't think so, and then I'm going to add something.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think that recognizing the malleability of experience, recognizing that your life up until this point, and everything that you've experienced about it, and everything about what it has been like to be you up until now, it has been that way as a result of things that you were doing inside your mind, the way that your kind of neurological, psychological apparatus is operating, and recognizing that doesn't mean that it has to be that way forever. Whether you're 16 or 70, it doesn't make a difference. Your personality really is a process. Your experience really is a process. It's active and it's ongoing. And when you start trying on these new ways of thinking about thinking and acting, it transmutes your experience. It literally, by degrees and in stages, changes what it's like to be you, changes your relationship to yourself, changes your relationship to reality, changes your relationship to reality outside of yourself, changes your reality to relationship within yourself, changes your relationship to your experience, changes your relationship to your body. It changes all of those things. And that's one of the big things there is to get to that place where you're prepared to consider that all of the changes that you want to create in this life, and all of the changes that you don't want to create but would want to create if it had occurred to you to think about them and consider them as a possibility, all of those things are accessible to you. And you'll either look for those things and figure out ways to do them, or you won't. And the best way to do it is just to start now. The best way to do it is to accept where you are right now and to recognize that if you want to be somewhere other than you are, in terms of health, in terms of just your well-being, in terms of what it's like to be you, in terms of psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever is important to you, all of those things, financially, if you will just say, all right, I'm here and I want to be there. But I recognize, though, that my knowledge, my awareness of the desire to be somewhere other than I am is an outgrowth of the fact that I am where I am right now. So there's a sense in which I'm kind of indebted to this present reality that I'm not that keen on, that I'm not too thrilled about, because that is what gave birth to the desire to be somewhere else. And it's nice to know where you want to go. And if where you want to go is somewhere other than you are, thank where you are for making it so clear about where it is that you want to go. And you just start accepting all those things. That's sort of anti-resistance there. You can hear that. That's relaxing into the present. It's forgiving the present for being as it is, so that you can kind of pack up your show and start moving to where you want to be. And I think that's just really important. And so you really can literally, and this is, until you do this, it's gonna be, I hope this is true, but who knows, or I outright don't believe this is true. You can change your experience of information feedback coming in. And that's the meaning of the whole anti-fragility thing, is that it's in the beginning, people think ideal is nothing bad happens, but what we'll do is we'll compromise. And ideal is nothing bad happens. Worst case scenario, something bad happens and we're not ready for it. Somewhere in the middle is something bad happens, but we handle it and we survive it. Anti-fragility happens when something bad happens and you respond to it in a way that provides you with a personal experiential reference point. I'm big on these things, these personal experiential reference points, which you look back into your history, your personal history of experiences, and you say, yeah, I remember that. And this is, you populate your personal history with instances, with experiences of responding so resourcefully to bad stuff happening that you're better off because those things happened than you would have been if you didn't. That's anti-fragile. I hope things go well, and if they don't, it's even better, because I'm going to get even better than I would if things went well. And when that happens, you're really free from worry. And what happens then too is that this signal detection system, it's almost like a governor. It's almost like something that kind of tamps it down, that kind of dampens it a little bit, because when you start worrying about worry, you're sending way too much information to your body. Your body is adapting to phantoms. It's adapting to things that aren't even there. It's mobilizing its resources in a way that it doesn't need to happen. But when you recognize really that every adversity carries a seed of greater benefit, if I'm like, oh yeah, everything's great, I respond to everything resourcefully, and I'm walking down the street and all of a sudden there's this like angry gorilla running at me, I'm still going to get out of there, right? I'm not going to say, oh, this is wonderful, I'm just going to stand here. And so you just start responding to the actual reality rather than to the phantoms and to the phobias and to the fears and to the things that might be and to the shadows of something your grandma taught you always to watch out for and all that different stuff. It's kind of a funny thing. When you turn down the sensitivity of the signal detection system, it starts functioning a whole lot better, and you start surviving a whole lot more effectively, and you actually then start segueing into thriving. And so just recognizing the potential that exists for you here, far and beyond, whatever brought you here, whatever it is that you're wanting to get out of this group, that's an appropriate desire because it got you here. Now that you're here, though, we're going to continue going after those things and helping you to get those things. But I would like for you to kind of have in mind the fact that there are worlds beyond that, right, that you're going to go. And that this desire really is just the seed of the fulfillment, which is going to be the seed then of more desires of kind of a more expansive life experience, a more free and autonomous and wonderful just experience of thriving and what it's like to be you.
So awesome. So if you are in the group, please continue to post questions, whatever it is that you want, different and new ways of how can I perceive this in a way that makes me anti-fragile? How can I take this in, make it better? How can I, we'll be talking about how to again, respond and prepare for certain physical symptoms. How can I feel good about this? What are ways that I can think about this? If you are not in the group yet, please send me a message. I will post a link to the enrollment in the group. It's a monthly thing, so every month you want to be in it, you pay the monthly fee, and if not, you can leave at any time. It's just a really awesome way to do this group coaching, this group support for a lot of people at one time, because we're all having experiences and we want to maximize those experiences. And how can we get more out of life? How can we feel better? How can we respond better? How can we have better relationships? How can we get our physical bodies to a point of comfort and healing? How can I release pain and trauma from years ago? How can I help my children deal with what appears to be conflicts that they're having? How can I model for them resourceful ways of relating to emotions and to problems and to circumstances? And you have all of that ability, and really what we do is help plug you into those resources using these mental experiments, using these perceptual tools of shifting and changing the way that you see things. So it's a really amazing approach to improving what it's like to be you, which is really the heart and soul of everything that we do. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please, if you thought that this video was helpful, please share it with somebody that you think that they can benefit from it. So thanks again. Have a great day.
Thanks. See you soon.